Welcome to One Chapter, One Thought. I'm Pastor Chris from Lincroft Bible Church in New Jersey, and every weekday I read one chapter of the New Testament and offer one brief devotional thought. Today's reading is from the Gospel of John, chapter 9. As Jesus passed by, he saw a man blind from birth, and his disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he would be born blind?" Jesus answered, "It was neither that this man sinned nor his parents, but it was so that the works of God might be displayed in him. We must work the works of him who sent me as long as it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world." When he had said this, he spat on the ground, made clay out of the spittle, and applied the clay to the man's eyes, and said to him, "Go wash in the pool of Siloam," which is translated sent. So the man went away and washed and came back being able to see. Therefore, the neighbors and those who previously saw him as a beggar were saying, "Isn't this the one who used to sit and beg?" And others were saying, "Yeah, it's him." Still others were saying, "No, it's just someone who looks like him." But he kept saying, "I am the one." So they were saying to him, "How then were your eyes opened?" He answered, "The man who is called Jesus made clay and anointed my eyes and said to me, 'Go to Siloam and wash.' So I went away and washed, and I received sight." And they said to him, "Where is he?" But he said, "I don't know." They brought to the Pharisees the man who was formerly blind. Now it was a Sabbath on the day when Jesus had made the clay and opened his eyes. Then the Pharisees were also asking the man how he received his sight. And he said to them, "He applied clay to my eyes, I washed, and now I see." Therefore some of the Pharisees were saying, "This man is not from God, because he does not keep the Sabbath." But others were saying, "How can a man who is a sinner perform such signs?" So there was a division among them. So they said to the blind man again, "What do you say about him, since he opened your eyes?" And the man said, "Well, he's a prophet." Then the Jews did not believe it of him, that he had been blind and had received sight, until they called the parents of the man who had received his sight. They questioned them, saying, "Is this your son, who you say was born blind? How does he see?" His parents answered them and said, "We know that this is our son, and we know that he was born blind. But how he now sees, we don't know. And we don't know who opened his eyes. Ask him. He is of age. He will speak for himself." His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jews. For the Jews had already agreed that if anyone confessed Jesus to be the Christ, he was to be put out of the synagogue. For this reason his parents said, "He is of age, ask him." So a second time they called the man who had been blind and said to him, "Give glory to God. We know that this man is a sinner." Then he answered them, "Whether he's a sinner, I don't know. One thing I do know, though I was blind, now I see." So they said to him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" He answered them, "I told you already, but you didn't listen. Why do you want to hear it again? You don't want to become his disciples too, do you?" They reviled him and said, "You are his disciples, but we are disciples of Moses. We know that God has spoken to Moses, but as for this man, we don't know where he is from." The man answered and said to them, "Well, here is an amazing thing, that you do not know where he is from, and yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not hear sinners, but if anyone is God-fearing and does his will, he hears him. Since the beginning of time, it has never been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a person born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing." They answered him, "You were born entirely in sins, and you are teaching us?" So they put him out. Jesus heard that they had put him out, and finding him, Jesus said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" He replied, "Who is he, Lord, that I might believe in him?" Jesus said to him, "You have both seen him, and he who is talking to you is the one." And he said, "Lord, I believe." And he worshiped Jesus. And Jesus said, For judgment I came into this world, so that those who do not see may see, and that those who see may become blind." Those of the Pharisees who were with him heard these things and said to Jesus, "We are not blind too, are we?" And Jesus said to them, "If you were blind, you would have no sin. But since you say, 'We see,' your sin remains." One thought. Why do tragedies happen? The quick and easy answer that I think a lot of people can be tempted to default to is like, well, those people just had it coming to them, right? When people suffer, we just think, well, they must have deserved it for some reason. But as we look at the text today, we can see that that answer is probably almost always wrong. Jesus' disciples thought the same thing because they came across a man who was born blind. And so immediately they go, hey, who sinned, this man or his parents? So they think that there is some kind of ancestral sin or his own personal sin, and that is why this tragedy struck. And that sets the background for Jesus to correct their misunderstanding. Jesus corrects their false beliefs by shifting the focus from assigning blame to then revealing a deeper purpose in verse 3. He said, "It is neither that this man sinned nor his parents, but it was so that the works of God may be displayed in him." So as we look at this verse, I think we see three things here. One thought, three things from this verse. Number one, suffering is not always the result of personal sin, right? Jesus explicitly repudiates that notion in this case. Now, of course, some suffering can be due to our own sin, right? Sometimes we make poor choices and we suffer because of it. But just because there's some tragedy, that doesn't necessarily mean it was the result of someone's personal sin. But number two, we see that God can use our suffering for his glory, right? This man was suffering a tragedy, the tragedy of being born blind, and it set the stage for God to work in his life and to use it for his glory. And so trials, they become like the stage for God to reveal his mercy and his power in our lives. And I think third, this is more of a personal application point from this verse, but I think it can force us to change the question. Change the question that we ask. When tragedy strikes, right, instead of running to assigning blame, like, well, who messed up or, who sinned, who's to blame for this, maybe a better question to ask is this: how is God at work through this? How is God at work through this? Going through trials, tests, and tragedies, right? That's never enjoyable and it's never fun. And yet, if we can learn to change our mindset, we just might be able to see the work of God displayed in our lives and even in our suffering.